Hello and welcome to the European Parliament. My name is Catherine Fior and I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Katarina Barley, new MEP.
Yes, absolutely.
But certainly not new to politics. You're a very experienced federal minister.
Yeah, I've only been a professional politician for 6 years now, but I've already had 3 ministries, family, youth, senior citizens and that was the one, and the second one was Labour and Social Affairs, and now then lastly Justice and Consumer Protection.
What do you think that you can do here that you haven't really been able to do in Germany? Is there a different perspective to your work now?
Well, I'm a European really from head to toe. I mean, my whole family history and also where I live and what I've done is all Europe. And I strongly believe that Europe is actually the place where the decisive things happen, because a lot of competences have gone to Europe, but it's also about being one big player in the world. It's about climate change, it's about digitalization. All of these are international global questions.
You mentioned some of the big questions that are facing Europe and that will have to be dealt with at a European level. Which one do you think that you will focus on in the months to come, or everything?
Yes, well, of course everything. I mean, being a politician in Parliament means that you always deal with everything, but I think it's about values. It's about values in Europe, but also in the world. It's about in which kind of world do we want to live, and we have the USA, who have one model, a very capitalist-driven model, money-driven. We have China, we have Russia, we have really big geopolitical powers, and we have the European Union. And I think it is very important that we put our values forward, which is freedom, individual freedom, and equality and diversity, and of course also the climate issues.
You mentioned these issues all linked very much to the rule of law, which has become very important within the EU, especially when we see what's happening in Hungary and
Yes.
Poland. And the socialist candidate for the top job, Frans Timmermans, was, according to rumours and according to what we've heard from the Visegrad 4 group, was rejected partly because he was perceived to be anti-Eastern European. What would you say about that analysis? And he was supported initially by the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and others in a compromise agreement, and subsequently he's been rejected, and this particular group of countries have been in the forefront of rejecting him as the candidate. Is that a sign that the rule of law is in danger?
It is one of the points why I'm so unhappy with the proposal that we are seeing from the Council, because actually there was an agreement on Frans Timmermans, and you mentioned it. He was responsible in the former Commission for the rule of law, and he was very strict on that and on imposing the values. And it's not only about the countries that you mentioned, it's also about others. Italy, for example, which also objected against him. So yes, I think to see Orban and Salvini, Hungary and Italy destroy the Spitzenkandidat process, which we promised to the citizens that they would have to decide who is going to be the next president of the Commission. And to have these people destroy that is something that I find not acceptable, that they impose on us who is going to be the president of the Commission, lead Europe in a sense, or not.
How damaging do you think this is going to be? I mean, I don't know how important it was in the German campaign to have a Spitzenkandidat, to have a high-profile individual. How important was it to voters? And do you think voters will feel betrayed by this approach from the Council?
At the moment, my feeling is that everybody just wants it to be over. But I think we have to see it in the long run. And the development was that Europe was becoming more democratic, and Spitzenkandidat process was part of that. We tell people these are the ones that you can elect, and the one who gets the most votes behind him in the end will be the President of the Commission. If we back down now, it's going to be again a decision made by 28, 27 people that get together and say, this one or that one. I don't think that we should back down on that, even if I see that a lot of people say, come on, let's get finished with that, we're fed up. But it's really worth hanging on, I think.
Just speaking to a few MEPs from different parties, there is a lot of opposition to this list. Do you think that the Parliament as a whole, not just your group, but with other groups, will reject this candidate?
Well, I've heard it from other groups, individuals, of course, from the Conservatives. I expect the Greens to object because they have been very strong on the Spitzenkandidat process. We will see. But what I see is that the Council is trying to impose something on to the Parliament, and I think a self-confident European Parliament should not accept that. I think the mistake was probably when Frans Timmermans had a majority, and the decision was, are we going to vote for Frans Timmermans against Visegrad, Eastern European countries and Italy? Or are we going to back down from the Spitzenkandidat in principle altogether? And I think that there it should have been made very much clearer to especially Orban and Salvini, that they are not the ones who are going to decide on that.
Finally, I have to ask, because when I looked at your surname, Barley, very English-sounding name, and then I saw that you have this connection with your family to the UK, to England. Given that we are looking at Brexit, finally, at the end of October, what do you make of that situation?
And that also is a devastating process. I mean, of course, I was against the Brexit from the very first day, but I accept the vote of the British people. Only, already 3.5 years ago, I said, right after the first referendum, I said I think people should have the possibility to vote once more, not on the same question. That is very important, because at that time, nobody knew what exit from the European Union meant. We had altogether no idea how can that take place. Now we know. We have different possibilities, and I think, not looking at, at what happened in between, but just as a principle, I think that people should have the right now to say, okay, we voted for Brexit in the beginning. Now we see what are the possibilities that we have. We have a treaty, we have a hard Brexit, or maybe we found out that the possibilities we have are bad ones, and we decide that we want to stay. So I think a second referendum is the only option that can get us out of this situation. I mean, people are fed up with politicians and politics in Britain, and I can understand that. But that is one reason more to say, let the people vote.
Many people have complained about Labour being a little bit indecisive about its position. And Labour, of course, are your sister party in the UK. What would you say to Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, as far as I understand it, Labour is in a very difficult situation because the constituencies with a high approval to Brexit and the ones who are most against Brexit are the Labour constituencies. They're the extremes. So even Labour being a very pro-European party altogether, they have difficulties in well, they have to bear in mind what their constituencies have said, and I think that makes it so difficult. But I'm glad that now, obviously, a second referendum is also on their agenda.